Hello there and welcome to my latest video. This time we're building the ICM Fiat CR.42 Falco in 1/32 scale. The CR.42 first flew in May 1938 and entered service a year later. Quite why the Italians persisted with the biplane concept when all of the other major powers had successfully developed clearly superior monoplanes is not something we'll go into here, but safe to say the CR.42 was the apotheosis of biplane fighter design. It was strong and manoeuvrable and remained in production and frontline service until 1944. It was operated in all climates by a range of nations and was universally liked by its pilots. Whilst its limitations as a fighter were soon exposed, as a ground attack aircraft it proved more successful, and this factor contributed to its relative longevity. This ICM release is the first injection-moulded representation of the Falco in 1/32 scale. It's immediately obvious to me that the company's made an effort to improve the presentation of its products with a much smarter box illustration than has been the case with some of their earlier kits, and a stylish, colourful instruction booklet. The positive initial impression is reinforced by an inspection of the 161 parts, which are cleanly moulded with sharp detail. Surface detail is a mixture of the raised and engraved, and all appears very well done. Before building began, some aftermarket extras were sourced. Edward produced seatbelt set and 2 cockpit details set, one fairly basic, the second a bit more extensive. Also, a late arrival was a set of canopy and wheel paint masks produced by Montex, a bit late but just in time to be included in the build. Construction begins with the cockpit. This looks good built from the box, but with the Edward accessories included as well, it looks excellent. The 20 or so component parts of the kit fit together very well, and the representation of the tubular framework is convincing. No representation of the seat belt is included, which is a strange omission for such a prominent item, so the pre-coloured Edward item must be considered a must. It certainly looks the part and captures the complex design of the real item very well. With regard to the colour for the cockpit interior, the suggestions provided by the painting guide in the kit were not too convincing to me. The actual interior colour, which is pretty well documented, is a medium blue-grey. This is well matched by the Vallejo paint I've identified here, slightly toned down with a 20% mix of their thinner medium. The completed cockpit assembly sits very snugly within the fuselage with no fit issues at all. The fuselage halves themselves go together beautifully. No fillings required, just some slight sanding of the main join line. It was at this point the very well engineered nature of this kit becomes evident. There's a complex curved panel that sits on top of the fuselage ahead of the cockpit. It fits into place so well that it was difficult to remove it after a dry fit, and it barely needed gluing at all. Now it comes to the engine. This is well detailed and assembles easily, but rewards some careful painting. In particular, it's a good opportunity to go through the range of metallic finishes that most experienced modelers have collected over the years. I won't go through the ones I used, but I will say something about the cylinder valve covers. 28 of these, but you only need them on the cylinder heads that are going to be exposed. The instructions are pretty clear about this, but it needs to be right, as the cowling panels, which we'll have a look at next, won't fit over cylinders that have had the valve covers added to them due to the thickness of the plastic. Once the engine is assembled, the cowling needs building. In another example of good engineering, the cowling is built up in panels as per the original. This gives the builder the opportunity to display some, all or none of the engine detail, depending on how many of the panels they use. Take care to make sure all the cowling panels align properly and engage with the cooling gills. A good way to do this is to attach the panels that are going to be used to the cowling ring first, even though this is contrary to the kit instructions. Meanwhile, the rear panels, coming in 3 separate pieces, are securely attached to the rear of the engine. Once these are set, the front section can be added to the rear, and it works well. It sounds complicated, but when you actually build the kit, you'll see that it's very easy. Finally, the cooling gills are fitted. Optional parts are provided for gills in the open or closed position, and both fit well. Wings and struts come next. If there's ever a problem with constructing a biplane, this is usually when it happens. No problem was evident here though. The short span lower wings engaged positively with the fuselage, with a join that needed no squaring up and no filling. It's a good idea to assemble the upper wing at this stage so that it can be dry fitted, as the individual struts are attached to the lower wing and the fuselage to ensure correct alignment. The 4 twin interplane struts on the upper fuselage are fitted next. They have large secure locating slots that ensure a strong joint at both ends. Then the main plane struts are added in 2 stages, the inner ones first, the outer ones finally. Between each stage, dry fit the top wing to ensure alignment and leave it in place while the join to the lower wing has time to dry. Once all the struts are in place, the instructions have the upper wing being fitted, but as with the cowling, it's obviously best left until the main paint scheme is finished. You can see here that I'd added the undercarriage before I started the main paint scheme. This resulted in a tricky little masking job. It would actually have been far easier to leave the undercarriage off, paint it separately and add it later on in the build. But there you go. For the main paint scheme I used life colour acrylics. The 2 decal options in the kit both involve the same paint scheme. Once the thing had been primed and pre-shaded with dark grey, the undersides were done with the Grigio Azzurro Chiaro, and then the other colours applied in the sequence that you can see here. As with most paints, I found the life colour works best applied in several light coats, but it dries quickly, and this means that a job can usually be done in 1 session. The paint appears to me, incidentally, a bit more durable than some acrylics I've used previously. When it comes to applying the blotches though, I did find the paint consistently clogged the tip of the airbrush, despite going through the procedure of thinning the mix, reducing the pressure and using the dedicated life colours thinner. In the end, it was a question of getting used to it and keeping the tip clear with a damp tip of a cotton swab. It made for a long job though. Take care to keep referring to the colour guide from the instructions when applying the model to make sure that it's even over the entire model. Before applying the decals, the red fuselage band needs painting on. I also painted the white cross on the rudder, although that is provided as a decal, but it's a simple masking job to do it yourself. The model was then given an overall misted coat of 50-50 Johnson's Clear with water, to which was added a single drop of each of the 3 main camouflage colours. This gives a good base for the decals and has the effect of subtly blending the colour scheme by making the contrast between the colours slightly softer. The first decals applied were the national markings on the upper wing. They went on very well using the tried and tested Supersol and Superset. Adherence was excellent, with no silvering and very good conformity with the surface detail. Some faint carrier film was evident at the edges, but this disappeared under subsequent coats of varnish. The rest of the markings went on just as well, but be careful because the adhesion is almost instant, so repositioning can be difficult. So, this is a very good kit indeed, hard to fault in any respect. It's well designed, beautifully moulded and with an excellent overall fit of parts. Decals are of top quality and the whole thing presents few difficulties if built from the box. The overall level of cockpit and engine detail is commendable and with some aftermarket additions becomes even better. There are several other issues of the kit in its standard fighter, ground attack or even night fighter guises, and aftermarket decals are already available for examples from several other air forces. Having built one CR.42, there's plenty of scope to build another. So there we go. I hope you found this presentation interesting and useful, and that you'll join me in future when I'm covering either the Ki-21 or the Stuka that you can see below. They were both very interesting builds. Anyway, thank you again. Goodbye for now.